I've had a few negative comments on one of the videos that I did that was a drill. The drill had nothing to do with physical mechanics, but guys, anytime we start talking about the lead arm getting locked out or barred, there's always going to be arguments. So in this drill, I highlighted a player extending his lead arm, trying to go inside out. It was really a mindset drill, but several people got caught up in the fact that it's a mechanical drill. It's the worst drill I've ever seen. So I wanted to clear up a couple things. Number one, when a player, I think 2011, Jorge Posada, his average homer that year was 399. This particular one is 445 feet. So not quite 50 feet farther, but a long ways farther than his average home run. So let's take a look at this and let's see what's happening. The argument being that Major League players don't lock their lead arms out. And I'm going to say that's probably true because they're not trying to. But they do when they hit their farthest bomb. So when he gets to this place where he's tapped and then he starts going forward with both the front foot starts to go this way and the hip starts to go this way, then watch what his hands do. They're gonna continue to go back. And they're going to go back to the point where they get just about completely locked. So at this point right now, his lead arm is locked out. And the angle that he's created here is very steep and a very good bat leg angle because it's well below 90 degrees. And it stays in that inside out where the barrel is inside his hands right up to the point where the ball's about 10 feet out in front of him because this ball's right on top of him, and yet he's still in this position and gets around in plenty of time. And the reason is that there's a tremendous amount of stretch that's built up in this lead arm. There's a tremendous amount of elastic energy that's built up in his wrists. And there's a tremendous amount that builds up in his abs when he does a certain movement. And that movement is when he gets to his load position, he starts his lead arm, his hands are going back, and that stretches the lead arm. You can see the bunching of his shirt on his lead arm, and all that is tension, torque, whatever you want to call it, because his hands are so far back that he's creating a stretch there. Now, when he stretches this, he automatically applies more elastic energy or stretch in the wrist area. You can do a quick little experiment. Take your top hand or your bottom hand, leave it on the bat, bar your front arm, and take the top hand and go right here and pull it this way. And what you're going to find is that wrist feels like it's going to break because there's so much tension built up in there. Now, as soon as you get it to that place where it's completely whatever the most cocked or the most loaded, then bend your lead elbow. And what you're going to find is two things. Number one, the barrel, when it started here, is going to go to here. Two, when you bend that lead elbow, you're going to feel all the tension go away from here, and that's what makes the barrel go over to here. So right now, when it's loaded, it's over here. But when you bend that lead arm, that elbow in the lead arm, it moves over. So you've done two things. You've taken away the tension in the lead arm. You've taken away the tension here. But you've also taken away the angle, the thing that we're talking about in the first place. One of the primary reasons baseball is so afraid of getting the lead arm locked is because they're afraid the swing's going to be too long. Well, you want the swing to be as long as physically possible, as long as you keep this angle right here. As long as that angle is solid, then you want it to be as long as possible. The swing isn't short, and this is his farthest bomb. Would you rather copy one of the bombs that went 350 feet or the one that went 450 feet? I don't think anybody would question the fact that when a guy hits his farthest bomb, I'd rather look at that swing than the one that he barely hit over the short porch in Yankee Stadium. But there's a lot going on in this swing that puts him at his absolute max levels of energy, of elastic energy. Now, another thing happens too at impact, and that is when the lead arm is locked like it is here, and the front leg is locked, When this crash takes place with the barrel coming here, there's an enormous crash. It's about somewhere around 2,000 pounds of pressure, depending on who you believe. There's regardless of what the actual number is, there's a ton of energy that's happening at this crash. So if he's locked and released, so that every bit of energy he has is going into the moment of impact, then he's going to absorb the least amount of energy at impact. And that's going to make the ball jump off the bat. If he's bent in any place, especially the lead arm, then not only does he lose out on all of that energy potential, because when the lead arm is bent, then this energy goes away. This energy goes away. This energy goes away. So all those places where you can store electric energy, elastic energy, have all been compromised to some degree or another. But the other factor is a major one, and that is when you strike the ball, if you're in a weak position and that lead arm being bent is weak, and this is bent, or the back foot has weight on it, so hasn't released all the way into this moment of impact, any one of those things is missing, and you're missing out on some of the energy. That's why this particular swing is the one that produced the most. That's the only one anyone should look at when they're talking about trying to get the perfect mechanics for a particular player. Everybody's different, absolutely everybody. And this player is not trying to get extended. I promise you he's not trying to get locked out before impact. It's just an accident, and it's a happy accident that happens, that if baseball was smart, they would start studying this. Because if bending the front arm created more power, the driving ranges of America would be flooded with guys trying to bend their front arm and perfect it. But the truth is, golfers do it for two reasons. It's far more powerful and it's far more consistent. Because the only way that a golfer can survive is to deliver the club head exactly to one place. If he's 1 degree, if his club face is off by just 1 degree, then his ball takes off and hooks or fades by about 20 yards on a 200-yard shot. So it's a crazy idea that baseball players should do it any differently when it comes to the lead arm. And my contention is that they don't. They might do it day in and day out. Cabrera's known for someone who keeps his lead arm bent and goes inside out. And all that's true until this happens. Until he gets completely locked out, keeps a pretty good angle, and then hits a missile. And then keeps his arm extended throughout the whole thing. And makes the longest physical swing that he can make. That's when that takes place. It takes place on accident. It takes place when the speed of the pitch allows it to happen. Some players go in and out of it. I've seen Jeter do the same thing. You see him hunt a pitch every once in a while, and he'll get extended. And you also see him take a ball inside out and stay bent the entire time. But he's only hitting the ball at 50 or 60 or 70% of his max. It's nowhere near his max effort. And so while I have respect for that approach, when you're talking about physical mechanics and the perfection of physical mechanics, you're looking for the most efficient one. So you have to study the most powerful swing that any particular player makes. I don't know if this is the farthest bomb he hit all year, but when Prince was in Milwaukee, this was pretty close. And this is just about as locked out as it can physically get. And it stays that way all the way through. That's a tremendous amount of stretch that's going on. Does it happen every day? No, because he's not trying to. Why does it happen this time? Well, if you see the catcher reach for that low pitch, this pitch is losing velocity. I don't know what pitch type it is. In this particular case, it's been a long time since I've captured this. But this is one of his farthest bombs that year. It was a huge bomb. But that front arm is locked. The front leg at the moment of impact is locked. And so he's absorbing the least amount of energy. So that's the idea, is that it's not so much that it happens every single time on purpose. Some players closer than others. Hardy is somebody who's always locked before impact, well before impact. He does it a little more by design than others. Somebody like Buster Posey is very rarely locked. Again, until he hits a ball that is tape measure. So you could study 50 swings, 100 swings, 500 swings. But the one that goes the farthest or is hit the hardest with the highest exit velocity, that's the one that you want to study, because that's the only one that you can say is at his maximum efficiency levels. Really close, maybe arguable that that's bent. Maybe you see a little bit of lockout right there just after impact. But again, this probably isn't his farthest bomb. All I'm saying is that if you study enough, you'll see that the farthest bombs are hit, the closer you get to this angle, the more close to locked out that you get before impact, the closer you get to that, the more energy is stored here, here, and here. You can see it in his shirt. If he were to bend his lead arm, some of this would go away, some of this stretch would go away, and some of this stretch would go away. And when all three of those things happen, and it happens all the time, there's just not enough energy to make the ball jump off the bat. Not to mention how much weaker he is at impact. So there's only two ways to make the ball come off the bat at this point any faster. One is to absorb less energy at impact, and for that argument, this needs to be locked. This needs to be locked. This needs to be released. That's the maximum amount of bounce or jump you're going to get off the bat when those things come into play, when those things happen. And the way you're going to create more speed, which is the other way to increase exit speed, is you've got bat speed, you got body speed, which means you're releasing it and going into the ball. So there's a lateral movement into the ball. There's rotational speed, which is important. It's not the end all, but it's important. And that rotational speed happens as a direct result of this elastic energy that's happening. And that happens as a direct result of this getting closer to being locked. Completely locked? I don't know or care. Doesn't really matter. All that matters is when every player that hits their farthest bomb, if you look at it, you're going to see the same thing. You're going to see them closer to what I'm describing rather than farther. If they tried to do it, if they were smart enough to do what golfers do, which is actually test it, because as soon as you test it, like I have thousands and thousands of times, you're going to find that the hardest ball that the guys hit is at the bottom of the strike zone. And the reason that happens is because that's the one that they get the most extended on. That's why the most homers happen at the bottom of the zone, against what guys have been saying for 1,000 years. It's not about when you get the ball up, the guy hits it out. No, the most homers and the highest exit speeds happen down here, not up here. I'm not saying they never hit the ball up there. I'm just saying that there's less homers and they're not hit quite as hard as the ones at the bottom of the zone. And there are physical reasons for that. But the reason guys don't hit more bombs consistently is because they've taken the wrong approach, in my opinion. They've tried to keep the lead arm bent, and it's not as efficient. And the proof is all over this. He probably hits the ball as hard as any human ever has. But when he hits his hardest bomb, you're going to see this thing getting closer and closer to being locked. And why is that? Because it creates energy, elastic energy there, and in those abs. And when this locks, and this releases, that's when you're going to find the least amount of absorption and impact. That's the formula for creating the most efficient swing. It's happening every night. But not on purpose.